Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the EACP Virtual B2B Aerospace Application and Technologies Conference and Matchmaking event. First of all, let me thank you all for attending this virtual conference. I am Arturo ANTÓN from SPRI, the Business Development Agency of the Basque Country, located in the north of Spain. I am the coordinator of the Basque node of the Enterprise Europe Network, the world's largest support network for small and medium-sized enterprises with international ambition. The network is active in more than 60 countries worldwide, and it brings together 3,000 experts from more than 600 member organizations, all renowned for their excellence in business support. We have organized this EACP Virtual B2B in collaboration with EGAN, the Aeronautics and Space Cluster Association of the Basque Country, EACP, the European Aerospace Cluster Partnership, the Sector Group Aeronautics, Space and Defense, and the Enterprise Europe Network. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the organizers who have contributed to the success of this event, in particular, René de Groot, from the Netherlands Chamber of Commerce, member of Enterprise Europe Network, Netherlands. This morning, we will participate in this welcome conference, where first-line speakers from EACP, the European Commission, and some of the most important companies of the sector will present the perspective and new opportunities for the aerospace supply chain. The EACP Virtual B2B Aerospace Application and Technology Matchmaking event brings together companies from a large number of European countries and allies and offers them the opportunity to make valuable contacts to find new topics for international cooperation along the entire value chain of the aerospace industry. The B2B meetings will take place this afternoon and in the morning and afternoon of the 2 following days. Let me give you some figures. This morning, we have to update the data because the number of registration is increasing. We have 916 participants from 51 different countries. 722 persons are participating in this conference, and 421 persons have scheduled meetings. The number of scheduled meetings is 131. But as I say, this number has increased in the last minutes. There are also 946 pending meetings. For this reason, I would like to ask all the participants to check their agendas and accept or decline this pending meeting because it's important to have good meetings organized. The conference that will start now is divided into sessions. That will be moderated by Francky JANSEN from the Netherlands Aerospace Group and Juan Tomás Hernani from the Basque companies Atlantis. I wish you a successful conference and good luck with your meetings. I hope they reach to fruitful collaborations. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Francky JANSEN from the Netherlands Aerospace Group, who will be the moderator of the first session of the conference. Frank, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arturo, and welcome everybody to this event of the EACP. Good morning to all of you, and it's great to have you all attending in this first panel. My name is Francky JANSEN, and I'm heading the National Aerospace Group, the Netherlands Aerospace Group, which is the national association for the industry and institutes that are active in aerospace and airport development. Our business is more than 80% export, and that is why we are an active member of EACP. They help us to connect our members to the European ecosystem of aerospace. And today's event is a good example of what EACP, together with its members, can bring to the sector. This morning, we have organized 2 panels for you, with expert speakers who will bring you the latest information, but also you, as participants and audience, can contribute by providing us with your questions that we can bring then to the panel. I will start with panel number 1 that will last until around 11 o'clock, and then Juan Tomás Hernani will take over after a short break of about 15 minutes with panel number 2. I hope you will have a very interesting morning with new insights that could maybe help you to determine the strategy of your enterprises. As clusters, we see mainly 3 groups within our ecosystem. That is the research establishments, the large companies, and the SMEs. All of them are very essential to the European ecosystem of aerospace. But all of us are facing a huge challenge. First of all, sustainability. How can we do it? How can the EU industry play a role and benefit from it, bringing prosperity in terms of employment and new innovations? Number two, how do we bring all the required technologies together in a much faster development process? And number three, first of all, how can we survive the crisis? So all of these challenges and dynamics of SMEs, they play a very different role. So this topic will be addressed in the speeches of this panel by three presentations of experts who will look at it from their point of view and, of course, different angles. First of all, I would like to introduce Klaus MÜLLER. Klaus MÜLLER has almost 35 years of experience as senior advisor at various aerospace multinationals. He is cooperating as senior advisors for instance, Bionic Productions or Fraunhofer IAPT. They're all very active in additive production technology, but he serves also on the advisory board of Aviation Week conferences and, for instance, also on the Abu Dhabi Aviation Summit. And to date, Klaus MÜLLER is the senior advisor at AeroDynamic Advisory, and it states when aerospace expertise matters on their website. So that is exactly what we need today, Klaus. So I would like you to give you the floor and explain to us the opportunities and support for aerospace, European aerospace SMEs. The floor is yours, Klaus.
Thank you very much, Frank. Let me share my screen in the beginning. I hope you all can see something. Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me thank you as the organization in the EACP to give me the opportunity to share my screen. Do you see the screen? Can I get a feedback?
Perfectly.
Okay, good. So let me first thank you for being part of this incredible aerospace industry event here in Europe and share our views with the European cluster community. As Frank already mentioned, this is an incredible group, and I heard in the beginning that there are more than 900 people listening to this. I think this is a great sample to bring our thoughts together to cope in this incredible surreal times we are living at the moment, and prepare for the future, for a future which will at least look very different. And at least no presentation, and especially no keynote presentation in this COVID times, cannot at least stay away from this white elephant in the room. And we need at least to speak briefly or extensively about the situation on COVID, during COVID, and hopefully after COVID. So first, let me begin with some numbers about the actual situation of the flight levels, or the level of flyings, the level of air traffic in the world. So everything is at least here in this chart compared to the 2019 level with a 7-day average. And you see that there was a significant drop at least last year in April. Then it recovered slightly, and the big domestic markets like North America and China recovered much faster. China was even in October last year already at the pre-COVID levels in domestic travel, and North America is at least only short before this level right now. So we are see that there is a recovery, but it's a slower recovery than everybody expected. In the beginning of the crisis, we all expect a V-shape crisis, but the situation and the vaccine development showed us at least that this is a way serious crisis for the aviation, for the air transport industry than we all at least expected in the beginning. And now we have to live with all the changes, the shifts to new technologies and so on. Moving ahead, what do we think about the near future? And we ran last year as a company of AeroDynamic Advisory. We ran an extensive assessment about the situation. We spoke with, I would say, more than 200 people throughout the industry and tried to understand and forecast with our own model the future. In the beginning, and I like to share this anecdote with you, because in the beginning we had a controversial discussion between the US team and the European team, because the Americans didn't take it so serious in the beginning, and it was and COVID was always really in a heavy impact here in Europe. So we as the Europeans we've seen the world much darker than our American colleagues. This shifted over the year, vice versa. Then it turned at least down the opposite, and the American colleagues were really depressed in the third quarter of last year. Nevertheless, we finally agreed at least about the forecast model, and we developed 3 different scenarios. And you see here the outcome, which is saying, and the orange bullet. Yeah.
Can I ask you to switch over to presentation mode with your screen, because I think that we only see the first slide.
Oh, because I am in the screen in the share modus. Okay, good. So let's take this.
But we do not see the presentation mode. We only see the let's say we see your we can see it, but there is still a lot of modification around it. But if you just follow the slides exactly, then it will be all right.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I wonder, because I'm seeing here the presentation mode. Do you see further charts?
Yes, we see now the slide, the second slide.
Okay. So in total, we are expecting to come to an end of this story chart is with the at least implementation of vaccine strategies all over, especially led here in North America or led in Europe. We see that there is a recovery to come in air traffic and air transport, and this is in our assumption, in our forecast. We expect that we will reach 2019 levels not before the middle, or maybe if we are looking a little bit more positive on the situation, we see that maybe in the second quarter 2023, but maybe also in the third or fourth quarter, that we are coming back on the pre-COVID levels. But this will definitely mean that we are arriving in a new normal. The new normal will look very different, and I give you at least one quick example for this. Look what we are doing right now. We are sitting here all in front of our screens, and sitting together, and we are sharing our thoughts. We are sharing everything what we can share with a virtual platform, but we are not traveling. So we have 900 people sitting here in front of the screens. And if I would adjust that these 900 people would usually travel to a conference and spend the time together in social contact, this would mean that the airline industry or the air transport industry will have a large revenue out of this. Unfortunately, this is now invented, and we will see a large number of future events, future conferences, future meetings, which will then transfer to a virtual mode, and especially the intra-corporate travel. The intra-corporate travel means at least that these are the trips between the locations of a company, and I'm sure you already also dealing with controllers, and these controllers will remember the good old days in 2020 when the travel budgets were down to zero. And though we will see in the future definitely a switch towards more leisure travel and business travel, especially intra-corporate travel will be slowing down significantly. And this is something where the industry, especially the air transport industry or the airlines, has to cope with. Bringing this scenarios together, we anticipated at least also what does this mean for the aircraft production, because this is, at least for you guys or for our supply chain, the most important subject.
Klaus, it still doesn't work. I'm sorry. I think it is the screen that is copied. So I think that YouTube sees another screen than Teams.
Do you see this screen right now? This is the aircraft production screen.
So if I don't see it's changing on YouTube.
Oh, okay. I have at least only the screen on Teams. So sorry, I can only share the screen of Teams.
Yeah, I think that's what we have to deal with them. But
what do you see? Do you see now the chart with the overall production?
I see, of course, the Teams screen. But if you look at YouTube, then I only see the first one. So
okay.
I think you have to continue your story based on the fact that not everybody might see the picture.
Okay, so I'm very sorry for all YouTube visitors that you cannot follow the charts, but I promise whenever you contact me later on, I can share the presentation with you, of course. So coming at least to the aircraft production, this is at least one of the leading numbers, which is very important for the supply chain of the industry. We used all the information we had. We used everything at least to. Now I'm thrown out. No. I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Is that right?
You don't see that on YouTube. I think they start to share your PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, I see.
On YouTube.
Okay, so
just continue your story. I think they are managing.
Okay, so in terms of the overall production, we see that there was a significant drop from nearly 2,000 aircraft production in 2019 to 800, less than 800 at least in 2020, and this number will climb slowly but steadily towards a pre-COVID level, which is not reached by earlier than 25, 26, if we are living in a proper, at least more travel intense world again, or in our new normal again. Interestingly, we will see a significant shift towards the single aisle production because the single aisle, the domestic travel, and especially the leisure travel will lead, or will take the lead within the next within the next 3, 4, 5 years, and all manufacturers are starting to prepare to increase or to prepare for more narrow body and single aisle production. Wide body production is hit significantly because we had an overcapacity before COVID. Many experts knew that, and this is now sorted out. And with the still very strong disconnection of the large continents by travel bans, by travel restrictions, we will see a slow recovery in the wide body production over the upcoming 5 to 10 years. So pushing back, so we discussed this intensely, and last week there was this huge Airbus announcement that the Airbus surprised the industry with plans to significantly increase the production rate. And it was not at least out of nothing, because Airbus prepared the supply chain before COVID, at least also for 60 aircraft and 60 and more aircraft for per month. Nevertheless, this is now whatever in the middle. this is now in the middle of the pandemic, and then Airbus is now preparing the industry to work towards more production, and they see at least a robust air travel recovery. And we spoke last week with them, and they gave a clear signal that they believe that there is a strong recovery, maybe a stronger recovery that we are anticipating, and they want a clear signal to the supply chain that the supply chain has to prepare and has to invest. I would say, from my perspective, that Airbus did do this with their supply chain over the last decades intensely, that they prepared it upfront, and they at least to work with their supply chain to make sure that their deliveries can happen with functioning and a proper defined supply chain. And of course, they also want to pressure the market because their competition, I'm sorry, it's Boeing mostly, they are really depressed. I would not say even distracted at the moment with the MAX disaster, with the COVID in the aftermath, and then they are still struggling at least to make a decision to get at least a new aircraft on the start to compete with Airbus and in the battlefield of a narrow body. And I think last week they announced something which sounds a little bit like a 757 replacement they are considering. And of course, with an A320, they can at least accelerate their cash flow or their inbound cash flow, which would be definitely at least good for all of this. And as mentioned, they like to push Airbus, Boeing to launch a new aircraft. Also, the MRO supply chain is at least working towards a return. We see in the US a very busy heavy maintenance activity over the last I would say 12 months. In Europe, it's a bit mixed. Some heavy maintenance organizations are really doing fine. They are full, and but some are really struggling. And we heard also some signals that European airlines already started or have removed some base maintenance slots from their suppliers. Asia, China, from our perspective, it's fully recovered. And the engine MROs are also a little bit mixed signals overall. They still have headwinds from the green time management impact, which is used in these times where still a lot of airplanes are on the ground, and engines could be used as a green time substitute to avoid cash flow towards an engine MRO. On the component MRO, we struggled a little bit with the forecast, but we are still thinking that 5 to 15% in 2025. In 2021 would be a good number to anticipate how component MROs will recover this year. And there are a lot of noise made by the P2F conversions, and several STCs are now coming to the market, especially with the focus of Asia, where this huge cargo setup is finding its culmination for passenger to cargo conversions, and all the big base maintenance and heavy maintenance players are now preparing to update their portfolio with passenger to cargo conversions over the next years. But coming at least to one of the key topics, we spoke over the last 15 months with many, as mentioned, many players, many suppliers in the industry. And we of course asked them and then try to find out a little bit more about their supply chain strategies. And we asked them what do they think about the number of suppliers, what is about their ambitions of vertical integration, should they use low-cost countries? The cost issue is always a topic, and single sourcing, and of course also do they work at least with the tool of active supplier replacements, also using of JVs and supporting suppliers through this really stormy times. And interestingly, we heard many times that they wanted to reduce suppliers. They want to
5 minutes remaining.
they want to get
5 minutes remaining.
updated. They want to reduce the numbers. But interestingly, when we asked this question in more detail, in more depth, it turned out they want a less supplier, but they want a less contracts. They want to have high quality, high on-time requirements, and these KPIs are definitely much more dependent for the OEMs and for the tier ones than the number of suppliers, the pure number of suppliers. They want to have larger suppliers. They want to have bigger suppliers with more content on their contracts. Also interesting, they asked, at least in many times, that their players should work towards more low-cost country usage. The single sourcing topic was thrived as a tool which is used during the crisis, because then they can consolidate work packages, and they will definitely soon, when the crisis is over, return to a multi-source strategy again. And what we think, and this is our input on this topic here, is there is a challenge 2022, because at the end 21, many government fundings will be stopped, and there's a lot of European government funding in place. Also, the US are funding the industry strongly. And will this lead at least to a wave of liquidity shortages or insolvencies? So we will see. So I guess the year, or the first quarter 2022 will become a very interesting year for the supply chain. I was asked also to deliver a quick overview what is happening, at least in the technology. So we put together our thoughts, our top line product technology trends, and of course the biggest noise is coming from green propulsion, and we are using green propulsion as I would say our keyword, our buzzword for emission free. And we see that there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of public funded activity and the electric propulsion, and maybe later on, maybe 10-15 years later, hydrogen and fuel cells will find its way towards the industry. But these are long-term trends. We should not make a lot of noise, or we can of course make noise about this green propulsion topic, but this topic will not change the industry significantly within the next 10 years. These next 10 years are at least much more affected by the Industry 4.0 and advanced manufacturing topics, like model-based system engineering, which is definitely targeting to shorten the development cycles of aircraft. The Internet of Things increase the shop productivity and all that stuff. So you need to give me at least one more minute. And these topics are at least driving the industry, and they could be implemented throughout the industry in a short term, and this could at least lead to much lower, or to reduce the cost, and this is important for the upcoming future. There are of course also in the avionics and electronics topics, the batteries, the MEMS, the connectivity, broadband. These are topics which are definitely need to take care if you are an SME, because these technologies lead at least they will lead at least towards a better approach for small and mid-sized companies, because you have all the opportunity to prepare yourself in this ecosystem. And I think in the Industry 4.0, or in the digitalization as a general buzzword, there are a lot of opportunities where you can at least develop your cost base in a much shorter way than to wait for the next big thing in the green deal, or in the green or in the electric propulsion arena. So in the near term, to sum it up, in the near term, we see that for an SME or for small and mid-sized enterprises. There are a lot of opportunities in the next couple of years, even without large investments, to become more digital, to liaise, to connect much more with your supply chain and with your clients, to improve at least the connectivity and improve the transparency of your production for everybody in the supply chain. In the midterm, of course, there are these huge opportunities in green propulsion and in evolving avionics and electronic topics. But you have to be aware it takes a while. It will take 5 and more years to prepare. So you should definitely start this adventure to go into these topics, to deliver the right skills when they are needed from the supply chain. And to finish it up, so the OEMs and tier ones, they consolidate their supply base. And of course, this is definitely something which will happen in the post-COVID world. But they wanted to have at least suppliers. They want to have vendors who are larger, who are more diversified customers. They have a broader industry base to cope with ups and downs and with crisis. But this is something every purchasing manager of the world will tell you when you ask him. And at least there was one thing which kept thrived our mind, that using low-cost countries, using at least a lower cost base would be an opportunity many companies should think about. This is what I like to produce. Sorry for running a little late, but I think this was due to the technical reasons we had to cope with. Thank you very much, and if you need anything, let me know, and I will provide you with the presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Klaus, of sharing your view on the opportunities actually, and the possible consequences and choices that you could make in order to survive the crisis and to step over into the new world of aerospace, which you have shown that will pop up. I think that going back to the normal as we know it, let's say for 2 years ago, it's probably not going to happen. So I think it's a good information that you provided us to help us to predict and to make choices for the future. I'm looking at the questions that are coming in. You touched upon it very briefly, but maybe it's good if you go a bit into more detail about the consequences of the shortage in electronic components, because it will have its consequences, of course, in the new aircraft, but also in the MRO. Can you give some insight in that on the basis of what you know now?
Yeah. At the moment, we haven't heard that there is too much shortage in the aerospace, but I expect that there will be also a shortage, because all other industries are suffering shortages in the electronics and in semiconductor deliveries and so on. Maybe we should ask then later on Airbus and then Boeing the question if they are starting to prepare their own production, because this is the reaction of the automotive industry, that they are starting at least to build their own supply chain. So I haven't heard at the moment too much of shortages of electronics and chip chip supply in aerospace, but I am sure this will come, and this will then maybe become one of the distractors of Airbus plans to increase the production. Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Another question that came in is about the use of, there will be more personal aircraft. So do you think that the spreading of more personal aircraft will change the aviation usage modalities and so the entire market?
I should be not sound too cynical, because maybe I'm getting too old. I'm now in the 35th year in my career in the industry, and I hear personal aircraft since 35 years, and I'm pretty sure this will happen sooner or later. But I have still rather significant doubts that our certification processes and our authorities can cope with this. At the moment, we are really struggling to implement or to bring new airplanes into the air, because the certification process is heavy, it's complex, it's very expensive, and this is slowing down the development of aircraft significantly. Yeah. And I have significant doubts if I would have whatever an aircraft sitting outside at the street and would now whatever try to fly from my home to downtown. I have to pass a lot of examination and I have to pass a lot of grades to do that, yeah, to make it proper. I see the bigger shift more in the traffic on the ground, and if we are able at least to cope with autonomous driving on the ground, then I am sure then we will find a way to cope with more individual airplanes or flying.
Okay, well, that's let's say that's an interesting remark. So where you connect it to another modality, and when that is autonomous, then maybe the next step. Okay, well, that's an interesting one. Well, thank you very much, Klaus, for sharing your views with us. I hope you will stay with us for the questions maybe at the end of the panel. So please stay with us, and then we will move over to the next speaker. And the next speaker is Anna MAAßEN. And Anna MAAßEN is the EACP network coordinator, as it is stated on the website. But I think that doesn't describe the value of Anna for the EACP. I maybe would like to call her the European cluster magnet. And you know, the interesting thing of a magnet is if you bring small magnets together, they will become a stronger magnet. And that's actually what she does. So she brings together the entire SME community with great enthusiasm and professionalism, and she makes it stronger. And to determine the value of the EACP in a crisis was, of course, something new. But the EACP learns fast, and that's also, let's say, the characteristics of SMEs. They learn fast and they adapt fast. So I'm really happy to give the floor to Anna MAAßEN, who will tell us about the role of the EACP in the current situation. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Frank. Well, first of all, I don't know what to say for this compliment. Thank you. But I think that's more the position that EACP has than the value that EACP has for all of us who work within it. So good morning, everybody. Good morning from my private apartment into the world. My name is Anna MAAßEN, and I work for Hamburg Aviation since 2014. I coordinate the EACP, which is a network of aerospace clusters. Currently, we have 48 aerospace clusters of 15 countries. And first of all, I would like to show you a brief movie about the EACP that gives you, now it's hung up, an idea what we're doing.
And I cannot hear the noise.
Yeah, actually, it looks completely different than the moment we have prepared it beforehand. So I'll try it again. I don't know. I cannot click the button computer sound including as we have prepared it.
I think it's better that you start the presentation because showing a movie is always very complicated. Unless
that's why we have prepared it beforehand several times, but it looks now completely different than we have done it before. Okay, so I'll switch spontaneously until I have switched off my movie. I'm sorry that you cannot see it. It's a pretty nice movie, and give you some words about EACP. Yeah, I'll start again. So now I'm there. I have blended out some slides because I wanted to show you it in the movie, but now I took them back again to give you a full picture of EACP. So EACP is a network of aerospace clusters. As I've already mentioned, we're coming together to share our knowledge, to encouraging growth, supporting innovation, strengthening relationships. The idea is that we're bringing together everybody who's involved in aerospace clusters. So, of course, the cluster management, but with them, the companies, so the industrial perspective, and all governmental levels from regional to federal to European levels, and also the research and innovation institutes, the universities. So everybody who's somehow involved into the aerospace sector. We're doing joint projects, we're coming up into working groups. So we're all teaming up to work together. What are the EACP goals? What is our perspective? So we're coming together to learn about market development within the EU, but also internationally. We have, yeah.
I've been asked to ask you to share the PowerPoint with Hekan because they can't see it on their screen.
Okay. Maybe now.
Yeah, I don't know. I see them typing at the moment. We can see you now on the YouTube channel.
I'm wondering.
And I see the PowerPoint on the YouTube channel. So I think they managed it, Anna.
Okay. So I'm wondering why it looks different than when we have tried it out before. That's a little bit weird. Okay, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Well, we're on cluster management level, teaming up for joint projects to work from cluster to cluster. But we're doing this, of course, to at the end bring together business and to business, to bring together research partners, but also companies, so the industrial players. And at the end, we try to influence European policy with the idea of what we have about the aerospace sectors to design calls maybe a little bit more suitable for especially SMEs, and to also allow funding requirements to be more easy or more attractive for possible projects. And also on the European scale, we promote regional competences and capabilities. So now this is just a short picture to give you an overview about who EACP is. As already mentioned, there are 48 aerospace clusters spread all over Europe. We're not only speaking about the European Union, as you can see, we have our friends from the UK, but also Switzerland and other partners who are not directly in the European Union. So we're speaking about the European mindset. So the original idea of this, of what I'm telling you is we're now in a times of crisis. So what has happened? The situation is or was as following. There was this breakout of this new virus in the beginning of last year. We all know that some countries were hit harder or earlier, and the situation changed quickly from medium to high. And the other way around, and returned back in waves. So something that we haven't experienced on that scale before, and something that was completely new for us. The consequence were that we had lockdowns everywhere in many countries, and this was crucial. The lockdowns were meant to avoid a collapse of the health system. But if we're, for example, looking at, or in this case, looking at the traveling, there was a full stop of traveling, as you can see at the chart at the right, in the time scale from the month into the number of flights or flight movements. In blue, you can see what we had before in 2019, 2020. So something that we were used to. It was ever since air traveling an increasing number of movement. And suddenly there was a completely drop down almost onto zero. So this was extreme. And of course, this had also consequences or massive consequences for our industry because of the massive reduction of passenger flights. There was of the complete shut of borders at international traffic, there was less demand for new aircraft, which meant a slowdown of production and a delay of deliveries, which had consequences for the supply chain, less demand from their side. And at the end, for those countries who had the possibility, a short-time work, or if not, even redundancies. So very, very, very hard consequences. Regarding the field of R&D and skills and qualification, the change is, of course, a little different because they're at least mostly publicly funded, but also there is a full stop of fruitful meetings with their side talks that normally had taken place at project meetings, classrooms, etc. And those effects might not be seen immediately, but they are also crucial for coming up with new projects and a stop of what we have for what we beforehand had to foster our innovation potential. So for everyone, there was the crucial need for comparable occasions to come together and to meet new players or old ones that you want to take up contact. And EACP was asked to somehow come up with a possibility to do so. That's why we're here today. Not really in one room, but at least later today and the next days face to face to have again those meetings. We're all aware that it's not the same quality, but I think most of us have experienced that there's still much quality in it and can be beneficial to have those meetings also virtually. At least it's better than nothing. Yeah, so what was needed in times of crisis? We soon experienced that the information was the main point that was needed in times of crisis, to have a flow of information, of course, mainly between industry and public authorities, because what are they asking for? What kind of support do they need? Who concretely needs the support? How can the support look like and where to get it? Because at the end, companies will ask for cash to survive. The industry from the state, but this information is also needed from industry to industry, so along the supply chain. And this is exactly what EACP could offer, the channel for communication between the industry, so especially for the SMEs to the state, and to reach out for the right recipients so that the right people learn about the needs and also can help. But this goes for all levels, so for regional level, for federal level, but also for European level. This information could help companies to turn to temporarily adapting business models also, because they receive information about how will I receive help and when will it be, and what kind of other alternatives will there be. Speaking about the hygienic standards that changed from state side, that opened new business models. And really important also in the information was the open scientific calculation of future scenarios, a next step. So suddenly we came up with people who brought up calculations, so what they estimate, what effects this might have and how long we will have to deal with the effects of those lockdowns. To be honest, never ever had the EACP prepared for something like that. But we soon found out that what we had initiated with the EACP already 10 years ago, because the EACP was initiated in 2009, offered a really, really great starting point to allow this channel of information between all the players. As clusters, then we could help on the different levels as an intermediary platform on regional level, but also on the federal level, on the national level regarding the public authorities. Therefore, I will show you on the next slides what kind of added value the EACP can offer concretely. So on member level, but on cluster management level, but also on European policy level. Speaking about the member level, and I therefore mainly concentrating or focusing on the industry, as they were hit hardest, especially in comparison to public authorities and research and innovation institutes. We started with having weekly updates. At least most clusters started with having weekly updates with their members about their situation and the restrictions, because suddenly everybody was completely overrun and shocked about the lockdown situation. And we exchanged about their current status, starting from working from home, but going also to the situation of orders and supplies. Speaking for Hamburg Aviation, when we learned suddenly that factories are shut down in Asia, and shortly afterwards also in Southern Europe, there was popped up this question: okay, what is happening with my suppliers? Where can I get the things that I need to further my production? Companies were aware that something is happening and already could try to look out where they could find alternatives.
5 minutes remaining. 5 minutes remaining.
And also there was the exchange of information about regional and financial support for companies. And we learned that there is also the number of services that we offered to our members suddenly increased, because we found out that we are not only offering services to our regional members, but we can also offer services to all EACP members, because suddenly everything is virtually, and why not open it to everybody? So that's why we came up with this idea, which is actually an idea of the Spanish cluster Hagen, to have a virtual B2B, but we said, why not open it to all EACPs? And now suddenly we have this 900 registrations, which is pretty good. Coming to the next level, cluster management level, we also had weekly updates over there to exchange about what we've learned in the weekly calls with our members. And we shared this output with the cluster managers. We shared the best practices, how we have a member support, what we can do. And we learned about the challenges of our members and found out that we share challenges, of course. For example, we teamed up to reclaim prepaid money for canceled events. So there was this big air show last summer, and many companies had already prepaid money to have a booth, but suddenly this air show did not happen. So on EACP level, we could team up and ask back for this money and have a stronger presence. And also we adapted many things that we did before in the real world to a digital format. For example, the Global Aerospace Cluster Summit, which is an event where we not only come together on the European scale, but on the global exchange. Normally we do that on Farnborough Air Show or Bourget, but as this was not happen, we're switched that into a digital format, which then of course had some challenges because of the different time zones, but we managed it into 2 different meetings. And it was crucial because of course not only Europeans struggle with that, with the crisis, but yeah, also Brazilians, Canadians, and all other countries. So that was a picture of the East Global Aerospace Cluster Summit. What are policy levels? So EACP also coordinated recommendation papers by the different working groups, so by the different topics of, for example, skills and qualification or cluster internationalization. And we forwarded this to the European policy level to also show the perspective, especially from SME side, about the aerospace sector. And we initiated a new platform, the EACP EU representatives, some of our members who volunteered to position information at the right places to policymakers, because they're from their regional cluster had for some reason a really nice position in, for example, ACARA subgroups or European cluster alliances or so on. For example, one paper regarding the topic of skills and qualification. Yeah, what were our learnings for the crisis? Well, the main thing is that the learnings should be maybe adaptable also to other crises that might come up or are even present that can be bigger than what we experienced with Corona. Having in mind that we're already in the middle of a crisis, that is already quite present, but maybe not even as bad, not that as bad as, maybe even better, worse as what we have now, but we're not really aware about it now. So maybe we can adapt some of the learnings. For example, proactive preventive actions is something that everybody experienced very heavily in the last month with lockdowns, curfews, and so on. Something that we experience can be very effective, and a recognition of the global perspective of your own crisis, so that you're not alone with your own crisis, but you're part of a bigger one. The awareness for the long-term impact of actions means that, summing it up altogether, a good trustful network helps to react early and mitigate crisis impacts. That's actually the learning that we had during this crisis, and find that EACP serves as a perfect platform to mitigate crisis impacts. Yeah. Here, one picture how EACP works with the different working groups, and that's who we are, coordinating this platform together with all the 45 aerospace clusters. So thank you very much for listening, and excuse me for this chaotic start that had been planned differently. Yeah.
Well, apparently this will remain, let's say, always a challenge to do so. And I think thank you very much for enlightening us about the activities of EACP, and I know that the movie is, I think, also on the website of EACP. So in that sense, there will be another chance for people to have a look at it. Anna, we are not going to do Q&A at the moment. That we will do after the next speech of Francky CALLEWAERT. So remain with us, Anna, and when the questions, there have been some questions raised already, but I will ask you the questions then after the presentation of Francky CALLEWAERT. So going to Francky CALLEWAERT, here's our next speaker. Francky joined the aviation unit of the Directorate General for RTD in 2015 of the European Commission, and he was responsible for monitoring the Clean Sky 2 joint undertaking. He was heavily involved in the evaluation of Clean Sky and the Clean Sky 2 by making the impact assessments, which is of course always important. What did it bring to the society, and to let's say, what does it bring to the objectives that we have raised for the two big programs? And of course, that was a clear input to the Clean Aviation Partnership and now the Horizon Europe. So Francky does not have a presentation, so he is going to speak to us, and we are very curious to see what you actually can bring to the audience, Francky, because let's say, I know that the European Commission is of course also in a very challenging time at the moment. So I hope you can give us some latest insights. Francky, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, well, the advantage of not having a PowerPoint is that maybe I'm going to have less technical difficulties. I kind of enjoyed watching this. It's always like that. The more technology you use, the more opportunity that something goes wrong. In any case, thank you for inviting me to this conference. It is indeed a little bit a strange moment in the sense that I should have a lot of information to tell you about the new Horizon Europe and the aviation research that is scheduled, but unfortunately, the Council Research Working Party, there is some delay there in discussions between the Commission and the Council, and everything is a little bit still confidential, so I cannot go too deep in the current state of play. In any case, Horizon 2020 is finalizing, although the projects will run further for another 3 to 4 years. And the new research program is starting up to immediately kill a few white elephants. although I shouldn't say that perhaps because, white elephants are rare and we should protect them. There are two of them, and one is COVID. Research is about long-term endeavors. So why in times of crisis should we devote so much attention to research? Well, we have other measures to combat the consequences of COVID. And the consequences of COVID are short-term, we hope. They are immediate, and that should not come to the detriment of our long-term ambitions. On a positive note, of course, aviation is very good at combating a crisis. We now have COVID. COVID is perhaps the most important crisis in the recent years, but we also had SARS, and there we saw that aviation, after a couple of months, already started to show very clear signs of recovery. And we already start seeing the same now with aviation now in COVID. There are very positive signals, as a previous speaker already said, from the side of Airbus. So we are going to most likely deal with this. The second thing is that the second white elephant then is Brexit. Brexit will, without any doubt, have an influence on the European research landscape. It's almost unavoidable. Although, of course, we are hoping for an association agreement between Horizon Europe and the United Kingdom, we are not yet sure how this thing is going to look like and how progress is going to be made. Now, coming back to the subject of the day, SMEs. Let's first see, what is an SME? Because there are many definitions, and then within our context, an SME is a company with fewer than 250 employees and with an annual turnover not more than 50 million euros. And a balance sheet of not more than 43 million. That is what we are calling an SME. Under Horizon 2020, the current research program of the European Union, there is something that is called the SME instrument. And the SME instrument offers small and medium-sized businesses a number of opportunities to do research under funding conditions. So we are funding innovation projects. We are having a kind of support services to help to make money from the innovation, because research should not only be about increasing knowledge. This knowledge has to be translated in products, and these products have to be brought to the market and have to generate an income for the companies involved, have to generate employment, preferably in Europe, of course. And there is also a kind of a coaching in the SME instrument to help a company to develop its innovation capacity and to help aligning the projects that they envisage to strategic business needs. Again, looking at the future, what are we going to produce based on this research? Funding rates are varying between 70% and 100%. I'm not going to go into all the details around that. But it's quite well funded, I would thought, for projects with a high research dimension. We were funding up to 100% of the eligible costs, which is very important. If you want to know more about that, I would suggest that you look at the Horizon 2020 manual. There you will find all the conditions and all the rules that surround that. Maybe it is too complicated, what we hear an awful lot, but it seems to be unavoidable that we are protecting ourselves and protecting the community from some fraudulent attempts sometimes, and this leads automatically to a complicated system, unfortunately. How do you get into something like that? You fill in an application. The application is evaluated by a team of independent experts. The projects are ranked depending on what they are, how good they are. And then funding is based on the available budget on one hand, and on the ranking and the quality of the proposal on the other hand. Under Horizon Europe, something similar will most likely come to the table. in cooperation with the new European Innovation Council, and that is an accelerator that partly will replace the SME instrument and will give a unique opportunity to SME again to do research together. Specific to aviation, what do we have here? Well, specific to aviation, for aviation, and completely aside of this SME-oriented instrument, we have the normal program of Horizon 2020, and this has two distinct aviation headings. First, we have the collaborative research, which has a budget, or which had a budget of around 600 million euros, concentrating on novel ideas. I would say very fresh ideas that are far away from bringing them to the market. Low TRL, with other words, TRL being technology readiness levels, and with the very strong involvement of universities, research organizations, and also SME, because this is the place where you go for funding when you have a completely novel idea of aviation in a given topic that is covered by the collaborative research program. Next to that, we have also a joint undertaking, a public-private partnership. This public-private partnership under Horizon 2020 had something like 1.7 billion funding, and the private sector was putting in another 2.2 billion. So it was quite a bit of money, 4 billion in total, with the ambition of inventing technology that was greening aviation and to increase the competitiveness of the European industry. And here we are seeing to some extent that during Horizon 2020, many parties have formulated some criticism towards the Clean Sky program, the public-private partnership. It was a very complex structure with leaders and core partners and participants. It was dominated by large industry, and it had the name of being a closed club, practically. With other words, if you were not a member of the small group, or a relatively small group, because at the end it contained 900 different participants, if you were not a member of the club, it was very difficult to get funding through that. Looking at statistics, now that we are 2021 and that all the money has been allocated to projects, it's not really correct to say that. You come to the conclusion that the program is still running, so the statistics are not 100% complete, but still we see that 41% of the participants were small and medium-sized enterprises. And this is not a surprise. SME are extremely important when it comes to innovation. The only problem that we see is that very often the hurdle to come on board of the program for a single SME is too large. And I will come back to that, what can be done to lower that threshold. So 41% of the participants are SMEs, and 19% of those 1.7 billion will also be going to small and medium-sized enterprises. So the idea that everything is dominated by large industry and that all other relevant parties do not make a chance, this is not correct. We also see the same when it comes to, for instance, research and technology organizations and universities. They have a substantial, very substantial part of the Clean Sky project or program, and they have quite a considerable amount of funding out of it. So you cannot say really that the prejudice, it is a closed club, that is true. One important element in that success, in the number of small and medium-sized enterprises for this Clean Sky program, is without any doubt that in the legislation we included a derogation to the normal 3 different countries, 3 different participants rule. So in theory, to participate in the European programs, the participants, the consortia that introduces a project, they must at least have 3 different participants, these consortia, from 3 different countries. The more, the better, but this is the absolute minimum. For Clean Sky, and thanks to the specific nature of Clean Sky, we have been able to introduce a derogation from this rule, allowing smaller consortia to also, I am frozen. I see, wait. Voila.
I think you're fine.
I'm back, yeah. So now I have, of course, lost where I am. So in any case, this derogation. Very important, the derogation within the context of Clean Sky. This does not exist anywhere else in the Horizon 2020 program, as far as I am aware, is that smaller consortia are allowed to join the program. Why could we introduce this? Because within the context of Clean Sky, every project, no matter how small, is contributing to demonstrators. What are these demonstrators? These demonstrators are extremely large projects. To give you only one example that speaks to the imagination, Airbus is designing a complete new helicopter, the Racer project, within the context of Clean Sky. What does that mean? It means that this enormous project, several hundreds of millions of euros, is broken down in individual parts. Let's say, for instance, the rotor is one sub-project of the big project, and the tail is another sub-project, and the engines are another one. And this goes to other companies, core partners of Airbus in this big project, and they themselves are also breaking down, for instance, the project to make a new type of engine for this helicopter. They are breaking that down again in smaller projects, until at the end of the day, you have a huge amount of very small projects.
5 minutes remaining.
You have a huge number of very small projects that, this is surprising actually, a huge amount of very small projects that come at a level and the size that an SME can handle. And because of the derogation, what we see is that a lot of SMEs, very often, with the assistance in collaboration with a local university or a local research and technology organization, come on board of Clean Sky. And they would never been able to do that if they would have to directly negotiate with Airbus, directly negotiate with one of the main companies of aviation. So this is actually extremely important. So I have something like 4 minutes left. What are we planning to do for Horizon Europe? Well, for Horizon Europe, we have done quite an impact assessment of what was happening under Horizon 2020 with Clean Sky 2. What is going to be the difference? Again, we are going to have collaborative research. Same conditions as the normal rules for Horizon Europe. That will be slightly different than Horizon 2020, but we don't know exactly yet because the decisions are not yet all taken. The other thing is that we are going to have is a clean aviation partnership, a joint undertaking. The Single Basic Act starting that partnership is still under discussion with the Council. So I cannot go into details how it actually looks like, but most likely the derogation to the general 3 countries, 3 companies will be maintained with a much stronger focus on SMEs, research organizations, and universities. So this is a huge benefit to SME for the possibility to operate within this context and to be in consortia, to be in projects together with the large aviation industry in Europe. For the rest, what can we say? We want to avoid a number of mistakes that were made at the time of previous programs and previous partnerships. And one of them is clean aviation has its own very clear ambitions. The focus is entirely on the Green Deal and achieving the Green Deal for aviation in combination, of course, with other measures like ETS and new legislation and so on. It is not a tool to combat COVID. If you want to do something against COVID, there is a recovery and a resilience funds that should be used for that. research is a long-term endeavor, should not be used for that. We are going to have an updated governance, ensuring the impact of the SMEs and the presentation of the SMEs in the governing structure and in the governing board. We will have a new technical committee where all the members will meet to work out all the technical details of the research agenda, of the work programs, and all of these different things. There is going to be a higher involvement of the Commission, meaning that the Commission this time is going to chair the governing board, and we will work very hard on synergies with other public-private partnerships, like hydrogen, for instance, batteries, because these new energy sources are going to be very important in the future. We are going to work on synergies with national research programs, because we see in Europe, certain countries have very important research programs for their national industry. If we can align the research agendas and the ambitions of these programs, then this will be to the benefit of everybody. And of course, we want to ensure complete openness and transparency in clean aviation, in contradiction to what was the habit and I will also ask my additional minutes. In clean aviation, in contradiction to what was in Clean Sky 2, there is no pre-allocated budget. So everything will be done by open calls, independent evaluations, searching the best projects, and searching the best projects and do it. Now, what is important for you? The first thing I would say is, do not to try to do this on your own. You are an SME, you are a smaller company. I know that the paper burden can look like a mountain that you cannot surmount. This is not true. You have to maintain your networking. EACP could be, I don't know exactly what kind of activities you have outside of making conferences, but you have to work together. It's not because you are small that you have to act alone. Also, large industry is working together and it's having its networking. For you, this is at least as important. You have to network, you have to organize, and you have to be sure that you can do things so that you know what to do. Take into account all the problems and all the questions related to working in a European research program have already been solved at least once. You just have to have a source that can give you that information. You know, we are now, if the numbering would have continued, I think that Horizon Europe will be FP9. Everything has been solved. And also, you may have a knowledge that is not common knowledge to the aviation sector. And this, you know, I'm talking about 3D printing. I talk about knowledge about hydrogen, technologies that have not yet at full scale been introduced in aviation. This is where your strength lies. You are very fast as an SME to change direction, to bring new things to the market. This is a strength that you have to play to the maximum. I hope that this was to some extent useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francky. No, it was very useful, and I'm happy that you that you made also the connection to previous speakers. So maybe it's good to ask Anna, for instance, to reply to what you have mentioned, the role of the EACP in the preparation of the of proposals, because if you have a proposal, then you're already very far, but you need to find your partners in the beginning, and you need to find where you can play an additional role. So how do you see, Anna, the role of the EACP in bringing together the companies to come up with brilliant ideas for the European programs?
Well, first of all, the main problem is that we're still lacking SMEs to be courageous enough to go into funded programs, or to even have the awareness about that there will be funded programs that support their innovation potential. In that case, EACP is perfect because we start from the regional level up to the top level. From the regional level, cluster managers have their own programs and events and also direct contacts to the members to motivate them and to address them directly with specific calls if they might be interesting for them. We encourage them, and we also tell them that we can help them to find the right partners on this European scale. As we have the EACP as a platform, it is quite easy from one cluster manager to the other to find a suitable partner, because maybe at first sight you say, okay, I don't know who might be interested to become a project partner because you only know your regional neighbors. But having 5,000 industrial player within the EACP network all over Europe, there must be someone suitable. But how to know this one company from 5,000 seems to be very complicated. And of course, there are many B2B platforms and whatever, but at the end, it's so much easier to only address your cluster manager, and the cluster manager via the EACP platform knows all the other cluster manager who have a direct contact and the best knowledge about their members, and know directly, okay, this request might be suitable for my company ABC, and address this one directly. And so we bring them together. They can team up and work on their project idea. And of course, then we further this project proposal, because the next steps are also complicated for companies.
Well, that's true. And I think a next step, for instance, a question that came from the audience, the question is to Francky. It said, for SMEs, it's a huge paperwork is required upfront as a non-paid investment, and intense monitoring during the project was always a troublemaker. Small SMEs have usually 1 or 2 skilled people within their company to deal with this. Will this new program reduce this burden?
To give you a blunt answer, we would hope so, but don't expect too much. It is a complicated thing because competition is very large. When we have a call for proposals, usually the budget, the requests, the proposals are 10 times, 15 times the budget. But it is possible. Clean Sky 2 has 461 individual SMEs participating in the program. That shows that it is possible. And these SMEs are effectively reaching results. They are doing their research. But again, if as an SME and you have 1 or 2 people that can deal with all this, if you want to do this all on your own, then you will pay, a large price learning how to do it. You should be doing it like this. You have to involve your network. You have to work together with other SMEs, share the burden, and don't wait until the very last moment. There is already a draft research and innovation agenda available on the internet under the Clean Aviation website. I think it is now already the time, months before the first call is going to be launched. We expect the first call to be launched when everything goes well in the council, end of this year, so November, December. At the latest, when things go wrong at the council, it's going to be somewhere like February, March next year. You should start preparing now already, even when not everything is known. Not perhaps by preparing paperwork, but in the first line by reading the strategic research and innovation agenda and looking where you belong.
Okay.
Start now, don't wait, because what we see very often is that a call for proposals is open for 3 months. So parties have the possibility to introduce their proposals during 3 months. And what do we see? On the last day, preferably when the website is going to be closed at 5 o'clock in the evening, 4:45, everybody starts loading up their proposals. and are very surprised that at 5 o'clock it is over, and they only had to upload one more document. There are an extreme amount of proposals that fail simply because they are not entered on time.
Wow.
Because they are introduced at the last minute.
Yeah.
You know, the website is open during 3 months. I can agree that the participant portal, that if today we launch a call for proposals, that tomorrow we are not going to have a proposal coming in. I can understand that, but I do not understand why you have to wait until the very last day to introduce.
I think the message is very clear, Francky, that that we have to keep in mind, let's say, these kind of schedules, and that we have to appreciate that, let's say, to be on time with forming the consortia, creating the proposals, and use the schedules in the right way. Because I agree, it's not, if it's going to happen in the project also, that would not be, let's say, a good signal. So you're very right on that. Now, I would like to go to another question, because we have a number of questions coming in, and we only have, let's say, another 5 minutes. So there is more questions coming in for Klaus. Klaus, this question relates to the Chinese aviation program. So what's your opinion about the Chinese aviation program of the C-19, the C929? And if COMAC can become a competitor to Airbus and Boeing, but also what are the opportunities for the European SMEs in these programs? Can you give us a short insight in that, Klaus?
A short insight is, can they become a competitor of Airbus and Boeing? Yes, not in this decade, and I don't see them also becoming a large player in the next decade, but they will. Sooner or later, they will be a competitor. There's a huge market. There are more than 4,000 or 5,000 aircraft to be needed over the next 20, 30 years. So I'm sure they can. There are a lot of whatever topics which are coming from the actual geopolitical situation with the competition between the East and the Chinese, or the West and the Chinese. So I would not wonder that during the next years we will see a lot of closing borders, a lot of trade wars to come. So I have serious doubts that the COMAC can generate or COMAC can generate a great aircraft which is then globally competitive over the next decade. But I'm sure they will, and they will come to become a competitor maybe in 15 to 20 years.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this concise reply. Of course, Klaus, we have already been talking about urban air mobility.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to ask you again, but the audience is also quite curious to hear the opinion of the other two speakers. So I would like to start with Anna. What's your opinion about the opportunities in urban air mobility? Can you give us, let's say, a short reply on that?
Well, we see bright potential in the field of urban air mobility. That's why we have also widened the scope of this topic within the EACP. I think last summer we have even initiated a new working group for this field to also widen the scope of our members. So the interesting potential of urban air mobility is that it's not even a new sector for our well-known companies, but it also a new sector for example, startups, which is a very interesting field in aerospace, because startups have a difficult way into the aerospace sector, as this is a sector which asks for very high investments, very high regulations, and the field of UAM has a very interesting and new potential, which is not that well, it is very regulated, of course. I don't want to say something wrong, but it's not that strictly regulated yet as it might be in the civil aviation sector. So we see very good potential for, especially for our SMEs in that field.
Okay, thank you very much. But also the question then to Francky, and maybe also because I see even a rephrasing of the question, if the UA, if urban air mobility can also be a part of clean aviation, or even other tools within Horizon Europe. Can you give us your view on that? Francky?
Now, when I do not forget to switch on my microphone, it's going to be easier to explain to you. Urban air mobility is not a part of clean aviation. Clean aviation is totally focused on one thing, achieving the Green Deal. And because it wants to achieve the Green Deal, they are going to work primarily on regional aircraft, on hybrid electrical solutions, and on the introduction of hydrogen as a fuel in aviation. This is the context. So even working on sustainable aviation fuels is excluded from the partnership. Urban air mobility, I would place under the collaborative part, because there we are looking at novel solutions, and I would tie together urban air mobility with drones, because for urban air mobility, I think we will need a very large impact of automation. We are not going to let just anyone fly an aircraft in between or high buildings in the city. Urban air mobility most definitely will be very important in the future, I think, but it will not be limited to cities. Urban, it has the idea, it is a city. I think that we should bear in mind that Europe has a huge amount of small regional airports that are at the moment, in many cases, completely underused because of noise, proximity to cities, etc. So if we talk about urban air mobility, I would see a huge potential in, at the moment that we are able to produce silent aircraft, or at least aircraft that are able to land and take off. I would see in silence or relative silence, I would see a huge possibility there to expand the role of the regional airports. And the other disruption that I see coming is related to the renewed introduction of what we called in the good old days Zeppelins, until one burned down. The famous Hindenburg disaster put an end to that. But I see several companies coming up, several SMEs coming up that are starting to exploit those ideas. In Germany, I know there are a couple of smaller companies that are looking at regional air transport with very small aircraft, with airport, vertical takeoff and landing, very small airport. And I think there is a real market for that. Now, have I now answered your question, or did I?
Yes, you. It was not my question, but you definitely answered the question, Francky. So thank you very much for that. And do you think this view is also shared within the let's say within the European Commission? Do you see big differences on this topic?
Or big limitation is the amount of funds available.
Yeah.
So with other words, we are now concentrating on the most important aspect, which is we should not continue to put the planet on fire, or we are going to suffer the consequences. This is at the moment for the European Commission, I would say, the driving force behind everything. That is where we put our money in to achieve the Green Deal, which means that we have to reduce pollution by 55% by 2030. And I know that all the research that we are doing today is not going to contribute to that, because the innovation cycle in aviation is too long to now start innovating something and already see a consequence on the market by 2030. We do hope that green aircraft on the basis of hydrogen or hybrid electric are going to become on the market by 2030, at the latest 2035, to have a very considerable impact by 2050, where we strive for climate neutrality. defined as 90% less pollution.
Yes, and that is, I think this message is a good one to end this session with, because coming back to what I said in the beginning, this is where we all have to work on, but we have to keep in mind that also the companies needs to survive the crisis to be able to work on this topic, and that's where the real challenge is, to make this combination of survival and innovation. That's also, of course, not only for Europe, that's also on a national scale an important topic where we have to find the right connections. So thank you all very much for giving us, let's say, your view on the current situation, in particular in relation to SMEs. We are now going into a break for about 15 minutes. So we will be back here starting again 11:20. And I would really like to motivate you to come back in 15 minutes, because then we have some excellent presentations from Airbus, from Boeing, from Embraer, Lufthansa Technik, Thales, Alenia, Space. So there is still a lot to view for you this morning. I hope you have enjoyed the program. Forget all the technicalities that we had in the beginning. And keep in mind all the messages that you have heard from all the speakers here. So thank you very much for being with us, and look forward to meeting you again in 15 minutes. Bye bye, everybody.
Yeah.